welcome to the Dr. Nurse podcast with Kristy Gilbraith, also known as the Menstrual Maven. And she is a military veteran and a licensed registered nurse who is passionate about women's health below the belt, health awareness, and health disparities. So she started her career working in the military in the U.S. Navy, and she has a background as a floor nurse. And she decided after earning her MBA that she wanted to take her clinical skill set and marry them with leadership training from the military. She went into the corporate world and then has now moved into her latest role, which is nurse entrepreneur, which she launched FLOH Wear by Undies Loft, which is her company that makes underwear that absorbs periods, postpartum, and mild bladder leaks. So I am so happy to have you on. Kristy, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, Sandra. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate being here. But yes, all of those things that you shared about me are true. I didn't pay Sandra, but yes, absolutely. I think one of the best things about being a nurse is the wide options that we all have to be able to go into different things. And for me, nursepreneur was definitely a path that I saw for myself, just based on my desire to have always been an entrepreneur, but also marrying that with supporting people, educating people in a way that is game-changing, life-changing when it comes to navigating the healthcare system.
Yeah, that's really great. And again, I've described kind of what you do, but how do you see your career, your job title? Like what would you say, like when you introduce yourself to people, you're like, hi, I'm Kristy and I am the what? Like, how do you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great question. I'm still working on getting used to saying I am the founder and CEO of FLOH Wear by UndiesLoft. I am. And I find that as nurses, it's so easy to lead with and I'm a nurse, or I work at the hospital, or whatever it is. But no, I am the founder and CEO of FLOH Wear, and I put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to be able to call myself that as it relates to getting this business off the ground and making a brand name that people recognize.
Yeah, that's fabulous. So tell me a little bit about how you got to this specific spot. I know you're a military veteran, sounds like you had told me earlier before the podcast, right out of school, kind of worked that career and then moved into nursing and then, worked into your MBA and then the business. So again, just kind of briefly walk me through that journey that you went through to get to this spot that you are today.
Yeah, so I did. I went to the military right out of school and I served 5 years active duty and at the only military installation of its kind in the world for the United States Navy. Go Navy, beat Army.
I was waiting for that.
And I earned my MBA at the time. So it was during my time in earning my MBA that I realized for sure that I definitely want to go into business for myself. I grew up in a family where entrepreneurship was not unheard of. And having that as a role model to be able to see my grandfather, who was the first person of color, own his own, I'm going to say brand name filling station in town, unheard of. For me, that was huge because my grandfather was an orphan. And then my grandfather at that time, unheard of, was an orphan, went to college, graduated college, started a business, was a successful businessman. And so having a legacy like that to tap into and do things with him as it related to watching him build this business and the administrative part of it. I always thought, man, that's so cool.
So you got your bachelor's in nursing and then your MBA all while you were in the military.
Yeah. So while I was in the military, I got an undergrad in healthcare management as well. So I've got healthcare management BS, and then I've got BSN and the MBA.
Gotcha.
And so yeah. So it was after I got out of the military. I was told I would be more competitive for a program that I really wanted to get in military wise if I had an MBA. So I got out and pursued my MBA. Gotcha. And then as things kind of kept going, I realized it's not bad being out here in the civilian sector. This is not such a bad thing. I did my 5 years and it was good, but I think I can hang out here in the civilian sector a little while longer. And so that's exactly what I did. And I've not looked back, but along that path in doing that, I also recognized there are things that innately I could never do in the civilian sector. One of them is working for someone else and being able to build a business that makes a difference for other people. And so as it relates to FLOH Wear by UndiesLoft, that really came out as a realization for me, as an epiphany, if you will, as a result of my own personal experience with my own below the belt health. And I share on my website my story about uterine fibroids and detailing how one particular instance led to me saying, okay, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. I cannot go into a client's office and literally walk in okay and then stand up and have left literally a CSI situation on their brand new white leather chair and then have somebody pass me paper scrub over a public bathroom stall so that I can walk out in high heel shoes to my vehicle in pouring rain, which is exactly what happened. And I remember feeling devastated and humiliated and embarrassed. And how can I ever show my face to these people ever in life again? And as I drove home, which was about an hour and 15 minutes in pouring rain, in between the tears and the rain.
Pouring rain as well from your eyes.
Yes, absolutely I was. And praying that I wasn't soaking through the provisions that were provided to me by one of the office staff who recognized that I had an accident, and thinking to myself, I cannot. This is not something mentally I can handle on a regular basis. And no one should have to experience what I experienced ever. And so as a result, that was the impetus of FLOH Wear by UndiesLoft. And you said something very poignant to me, which was, it's very traumatic. And it is. I always thought of it as, gosh, that was a hellacious experience, but it was traumatic. And out of that trauma, as we have discussed, out of that trauma was born an opportunity for me to serve other people and provide a platform to educate other people, to still use those nursing skills, to talk about below the belt health, to support people in advocating for their health care, and hoping to narrow the gap in a little bit in the smallest amount that I can do via my platform, narrow the gap as it relates to disparities as well. Women, people born as female, people with uteruses, oftentimes we talk about our concerns below the belt and they don't get heard. I recall the start of having heavy menstrual periods, years prior to this incident. And what I was told by my clinician provider at that time was, oh, it happens as you get older. It's no worry.
Oh, it's no worry. Huh.
And I knew better. As a licensed registered nurse, as a clinician, in my mind, I knew better. But there was also a part of me that just didn't want to realize what other possibilities there could be. And one of those being uterine fibroids. And I fit the perfect framework of an individual who would be diagnosed with uterine fibroids. And sure enough, I was, and I did not have the great experience of having a laparoscopic procedure. I was filleted open, like C-section, without a baby type surgery, major surgery, and woke up and was told, hey, we didn't get everything. And oh, by the way, if you wanted to have a baby, it's possible, but you may not be able to carry it to term. And oh yeah, you're going to need a hysterectomy at some point. So it's
devastating to hear those things. How old were you when you experienced this?
Oh gosh, 37. And we had been trying, my husband and I have been trying to have a baby for years. And so you get to this point of where you're dealing with your below the belt health and you're you've got knowledge on your own, right? Just by happenstance of being a clinician yourself. But there's a part of you that I think that's just very human that we can all relate to, that you hold out, because you hold out hope for your own patients, right? And why wouldn't you hold out hope for yourself as it relates to something that you want like so much? But the reality set in that, okay, we have to make moves. We got to make some decisions. And so for me, IVF was one of those decisions, and IVF didn't help my issue with uterine fibroids or heavy menstrual periods. It just kind of added on another layer of complexity for me and for my husband. But at the end of the day, that route didn't work for us. The IVF route did not work for us. But I'm a firm believer that everything is ordered anyway. Everything is ordered anyway. So things are happening or happened the way that they were supposed to happen. But it's brought me to the point now where I can ensure that other people like myself have the information to advocate, know how to advocate, know how to have conversations that are not adversarial with their providers. And then for those who have biophysiological challenges below the belt, like heavy periods, postpartum bleeds, and mild bladder leaks, to be able to provide a product that supports that as well. As it's a blessing to be able to have a platform to do all of that through this brand.
Yeah. You mentioned a lot of things that I wanted to touch on, and I was actually kind of typing it in as you were talking, because I was thinking about, I know a lot of women that listen to this podcast are African-American, and they are nurses that are African-American. I have them, they always write to me like, hey, Sandra, what about this? What about that? And I love it. And hearing you talk about the uterine fibroids made me think like, this is a population that needs someone advocating for them, teaching them, because a lot of women that have fibroids, especially African Americans, don't even know like, why is this happening? I was looking at they're saying it's some evidence of diet, history of abuse, vitamin D deficiency, a genetic component. So, and then they were saying, and again, this is one of the things that I don't talk about very often, but I find it very interesting that we tend to be the number one consumer of hair care products. And yet we are the number one people to end up having our uteruses have all these issues. And so again, I'm not saying I'm a conspiracy theorist and that I believe all conspiracies, but I have put the stuff on my hair to help moisturize. Girl, it needs it right now, but to help moisturize it and do all that stuff. And I started going through my own personal health journey through my own health issues. I have endometriosis. And so again, we're talking below the belt, you and I, we're just going to talk about that here today. So if you're a guy and you're uncomfortable, please excuse us. But yeah, I have endometriosis. I have all these other autoimmune type things, or looking at an endometriosis like it's an autoimmune disease possibly. And so what I find is that we put all these products on our skin and on our hair and our scalp, and they get absorbed. And where do those things go? And we don't know. And Black women have not been educated on these things. And yet when you look up the ingredients that are in these products that we put on our hair, and again, vitamin D plays a role, your genetics play a role. I'm not going to not look at only one thing, but we need to wake up to what is it that we're putting on our body. If we are the number one consumers of these things, how is this affecting our health? And I'm going to be nappy for some days if that's what it looks like. If I have to put this stuff on my hair to make you comfortable with my hair, I'm not going to do it. We just need to be paying attention. If you're going to put stuff in your hair, you need to run it through the ingredients, make sure this stuff doesn't cause cancer, because what I found was stuff that I was putting on my hair in Europe, they link it to genetic defects in your children. They link it to all these other things. And I'm like, I had no idea. I've been putting this stuff on my hair for 15 years. I had no clue it could cause these types of health issues. And so, yeah, I've had to come up with natural regimens for my hair. I spend more money to invest in companies that create products for your hair that do not cause cancer. And because we don't know. And a lot of Black women just want their hair to look a certain way. They want to kind of fit in with societal's norms. But let me tell you something, we are hurting ourselves, I believe, by doing this to fit a shoe that is not meant for us. And so again, that's why I wear my hair natural. I hope I do a good job on social media just to show that, because I've bought into the lies to a certain extent and feeling like my hair needed to look a certain way in order to be seen as valuable, as to be seen as, oh, you're. And I remember I put in braids one time. I wanted to wear braids. I put them in because I wanted to give myself a break from having to do my hair all the time. And I put braids in. And I'm going to tell you something, you get looked at differently. All my life, I was looked at one way. And then once I put the braids in and I came to work, everyone was like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, what do you mean what is wrong with me? I'm African-American. Like, I have braids in my hair. Like, I don't understand. And I actually kind of had to build a fortitude up. And again, this is between you and me just talking. I had to build a fortitude up to just be like, my worth is not defined by what's coming out of the follicles on top of my scalp. Yeah. And more African-American women need to embrace this concept, because us putting all this product, straightening it, heating it, pouring it into our systems, I believe that it is contributing to cancer, especially non-cancerous growth and the uterine fibroids. I mean, I can't see how it doesn't. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's kind of my own soapbox.
I was natural before. I mean, my hair is actually flat ironed. I got flat ironed this weekend because I needed to have it trimmed. Yeah. But I was natural before natural was a thing.
Yeah,
I've been natural for over 25 years.
Fantastic.
And I remember being out somewhere visiting a client, and I had a curly afro. Yeah. And I had a physician actually say this to me. He came out and he says, oh my gosh, what happened to you? You look like you put your finger in an electric socket.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that.
And I just remember my self-worth and value based on his words alone just went down, right? It just flatlined. And thank goodness for the Crown Act. But I am an ingredient reader as well. Polyethyl glycol, sulfates,
sulfates,
all of that, DPA, SMA, the whole bit. I am a firm believer that those things do contribute to increase negative health outcomes. Yeah. There's a part of you genetic biomarker wise, if you will, that you're already predisposed for something, right? There's a saying out there, if you live long enough, you'll probably have cancer because of the biomarkers. But it's the other things that you do to help stave that off. Just because you are predisposed or have genetics doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to beat this. There are things that all of us can actively do to help minimize those risks. So yeah, hair care is big. The food that we eat. I'm a big proponent of shop around the perimeter of the grocery store. As soon as you go down the aisles, well, I mean, and I get it. I PMS too. Exactly. But for the most part, if you're good to yourself, your body will return in like form. It will be good to you, for you. And so it's one of those things, a lot of the times, you don't know what you don't know, but as soon as you do know, it's time to do better.
Yes, well said. And that was, again, leading me to the second thing I was thinking as you were telling that part of your story and your journey, is that how your grandfather broke free from generational poverty. And by setting the example for you, he sets his family in a trajectory of success. And so again, as I was saying earlier, my grandfather and my father were clearly African-American on my dad's side. And they began that process as well of just kind of breaking free from the chains of poverty. And by doing that, setting the rest of the generations up for success later down the road. And so it can start with you. It doesn't have to be, oh, my children will be the one to break me free. Like, let it start with you. And then you can set the rest of your family off in a trajectory of success. It just needs to start with one person breaking free from the chains. And then you now inspire future generations to go, so my grandfather was one of the first African-Americans to own a business. And there is no excuse. There is no reason why I should not, cannot, will not be just as successul. And
That's
so
right.
you've got to break the chains, right? And I love that. I love that you are bringing awareness to women of color and women without color, because women without color also issues in health and endo and PCOS and all these different health issues and bleeding problems and below the belt health that they need to have addressed. Women of color have things that we need to have addressed that are like, hey, listen, our genetics load this gun so easy, but if you can work to not fire the gun, you might be able to stave a level of this off to save your fertility. And then also, again, going back to your journey and hearing so beautifully said, like, we can start breaking cycles of poverty and lack of education with us that then affects the rest. And so just start with you. You can't change your parents. You can't change your children. You can only start with yourself. So start here and then watch it trickle down, because it will. It has no choice. It has to go somewhere. Absolutely. So you've got to do the work. And so one of the other questions I had, I like to hear this because nursing translates so well into entrepreneurship. And a lot of people don't understand that our nursing skills really help us to build businesses. What has been one of the things that you found in your background as a nurse that's helped you navigate business a little bit easier? And then what's something that you think, this has been hard because I didn't come from necessarily a business background per se?
For sure, the research component. I remember being in nursing school, and I'm certain anyone who's advanced practice can certainly relate to the times where you had to do research. And it's not just reading somebody's blog, right? It's like peer-reviewed research, and you need to know where to go to get this information. And so for me, starting my business and it not being like my product is not novel. There are other brands out there that do what I do, but it would have been very much short-sighted for me to just say, oh, well, I'm going to start manufacturing these underwear because I have uterine fibroids and bleed all over the place, as opposed to stop. Let's do some research. Who are the key market players here in the U.S. and in Canada? Because those are the two places where I wanted to focus on for my business. What are they bringing in annually? What is their per annum revenue? Where are they getting their products from? Where are they manufacturing? How are they manufacturing? What products, what fabrics are they actually using? What are their customers saying? So it's all of this research on top of the fact of being detail oriented. One of the things I still remember to this day is as soon as you go into a patient's room and you see tubes and all of that, the first thing you should be doing is tracing the line back to the patient.
Yes.
So how can I trace the success that these companies are having? How do I trace that line to see at the most finite point or perspective of what they've done, and how can I elevate that? Yes. So that has played a huge role for me as it relates to transferring those skill sets of a nurse into business. I would say that my position in terms of needing more knowledge, polishing, if you will, is really understanding the international market. That's not something that comes by easily, even if you did go to business school, even if you were around others who have businesses or were entrepreneurs. Understanding international business, the guidelines of doing business outside of your country, is a completely different beast. Whether we're talking about importation and exportation, whether we're talking about sourcing products or component of a product to make a widget, whatever it is that you're making. That is something that is a deficit, can be a deficit for those for sure. And it was a pretty big deficit for me starting out, but thankfully there's the good old Googler out there. And then there's SBA, Small Business Administration, which is huge. It's a vault of resources that, for the most part, primarily of no cost. So I would encourage anybody, nurse or otherwise, considering a business, to look into the Small Business Administration as a launching pad for getting up to speed with some of the things that you may not be aware of.
Yeah. The gaps in knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. And you're like the third person to recommend the Small Business Administration for nurses because it's just, they're like, it's free. I mean, it's kind of like the invention of the library. I mean, like my son goes and they're like, there's a place we can go to rent books for free. I'm like, free, baby. He's like, there's gold everywhere, knowledge and wisdom, and pick it up and run with it. And so, yeah, there's so many options. And I think I love how you said that as you were talking, I was hearing like the assessment and implementation phases in nursing. I mean, that's what we do, right? We're trained to just assess, ask questions, figure out, trace it back, look at the full picture, look at the forest through the trees, and to really go back and try to piece all those parts together. It's what we do every day with our patients when they're like, I haven't been taking my meds. And you're like, why? Why haven't you been taking all the way back to the and then you find out like their pharmacy is just, the one that they're sending it to is just too far, or like that med is just too expensive. And so we need to switch it up. And like, we just find that that's what we do every day in our jobs. And that same process translates so well into business. And we just need to embrace that. Like, this is just what we're able to do. Hey, listen, you are not limited to just jobs in the hospital. You can come up with ideas. You can change people's lives. You can not only bridge your knowledge and your understanding of health with a product, and then you can pinpoint it at a group of people that probably feel like they're not being marketed to. Like, this stuff is not marketed to us. And so we don't really think it's a big deal. But now I see an African-American woman who is broken free from the chains of feeling like I have to be a certain way, or I have to do anything else besides just be myself. And I believe that this is what I've been called to do because of what traumatic events that have led me up to them planting this seed and growing this tree out of my manure, out of my really bad experience. I was able to build something, this beautiful tree out of this by planting those seeds. I just think it's such an incredibly inspiring story. And I think that when you see what African Americans can do, people of color can do, it's inspiring. We are some of the most resilient, incredible people, and we just need to step in that. We need to move in that. And that is for everyone, people of color, people not of color. I want everyone to see themselves, every nurse to see themselves as, I have so much capability. I have so much potential in this brain and in these hands that I just need to go after it. It's just
absolutely. I will say, if I could add one additional thing,
please,
for anyone who is, especially for clinicians, for nurses, for anyone looking to get into business or anything at all, whatever it is, business or otherwise, start with the end in mind. Because that's another thing you learn in nursing. As soon as that patient is admitted, what are you doing? It's, oh gosh, the term has literally escaped me, but discharge starts at admission. Success starts at the beginning, and you have to start visualizing the success that you're looking to have with your business or whatever, your new career. You have to envision that. If you start from the front and work, or start at the end and work yourself backwards, you can always almost figure out what your pit holes are going to be, what your gaps are going to be. You get that patient, they come into the ED, they've coded several times while in the ED. Now they're stable, they're bringing them up to the floor, and you're tasked to get the room ready. I worked in a 12-bed acute care hospital, so it was not a lot of care. I mean, so it's kind of like you did a little bit of everything, but you get that room together. But because that patient is already coded several times, that there are certain things you need to have ready to go in order to support that patient. It's the same thing when it comes to business. If you're starting from the end, you're starting at discharge, and what does discharge look like? What does success look like? And work yourself back to the start. You can say, okay, I'm missing the know-how for XYZ. Okay, I know I need to have this in place because at some point I'm going to come across this. And there is no forgiveness in getting ready. You don't get ready. You need to just be ready. There's no time. No. And so it's the same thing. We don't get ready to save a patient. We need to just be ready. for your business, you have to have that same level of mental fortitude, knowing that I need to do everything that I need in terms of learning. And that can be overwhelming for people, but the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So you learn one element a day. You create a calendar for yourself and you say, all right, I'm going to learn everything that there is to know about my specific product that I am importing. I'm going to now, 2 days later, I'm going to learn everything that there is to know about having a seamless return process when someone says that they want to return a product. And you work it that way. It's this, I think, can be overwhelming sometimes as a clinician because we want everything to go right. I think innately we don't want to see anything go wrong. We want the best. And that bleeds into our personal lives. And as it speaks for business, it bleeds into that as well. We want it to go right, but you have to realize at some point it's going to go wrong, but it's not the wrong that's the issue. It's the not being prepared. So
yeah,
discharge starts at admission. Success starts
with the end in mind.
With the exactly.
Yeah, because it allows you to work back a plan. I've been in the operating room with surgeons, and let me tell you something. When I'm with a physician that is laser focused doing his procedure, there is one thing they have all told me repeatedly. I need the room ready. I need to have my tools ready. I need to have my stitches ready. I need to have everything has to be prepared. He's like, 90% of this game, Sandra, is getting this part ready. Then the 10% is where I go and do the thing that I'm going to do because I have gotten prepared. I have that one staple gun. I have that one thing that I need that allows me to operate the orchestra seamlessly, right? Yeah. And so if you don't do that part, which you're describing, getting prepared, doing the hard work on the upfront, thinking about where am I shooting? Because where's my goal? Where's my trajectory? What am I aiming for? Because if you don't know where you're aiming, you're not going to hit anything. But if you've got a goal, you've got something that you're trying to hit, even if you're off by a little bit, you're still closer than you would be than if you had no plan at all and no idea what you were doing.
Yeah.
So, wonderfully said. I think that is fantastic advice, that the work that you do, the quiet work, it's the deep work. It's the stuff that's not glamorized. It's me missing going to the beach this past weekend because I needed to do the little work of the podcast. This is the hard stuff nobody wants to talk about. Nobody wants to do. We all just want to go and have fun and make this stuff look glamorized on Instagram and all this stuff. But this is really the stuff that builds and grows. And I believe it's for a reason, that it's like in the quiet, in the dark, in spaces nobody sees, that this stuff grows. People look and go, oh, how'd you get here? Oh, you got lucky. Oh, it was handed to you. It's like, no. To him when everybody else was sleeping. Like, that's why this grew. Because I was reading about how this one material is breathable more so than this material it's more absorbent, but it doesn't do as good of a job, and it doesn't sew as well. And that's what I was doing. That's the work I was doing, the quiet assessing that we do as nurses every day in, day out, that make people look at a patient, you go, he can't get a bed sore because we got to get him to discharge, and he won't be discharged. He's got a bed sore. So not only do I know that he's not able to get up and move, but now I got to make sure I'm turning him every 2 hours, and I got to be putting pillows under the spots. And so you're thinking ahead, you're prepared, it's what we do on a daily basis, and it is perfect for that same implementation phase, assessment, implementation, interventions. It's what we do day in, day out at our jobs. So it's just, it translates perfectly. And you talked a little bit about the small business administration, where you got some help. Has anybody mentored you along the way? Or has it just been you've been a wolf pack of one, which I find never to be.
Yeah, I started out as a pack of one for a very long time. So interestingly enough, this is not my first business. This is not my first foray into business. Probably 12, 13 years ago, I started in business, and I had my own brand, again, Aroma Chef Bath and Body, all natural, handmade, handcrafted body care that was personalized, which is, as we were talking earlier about ingredients, really got me to the point of realizing what's healthy and what's not. But I had a lot of that background that I was a lone wolf in as well, that I had tapped into to pull this business, FLOH Wear by Undies Loft, forward. However, as a veteran, I also have resources available to me. And it wasn't until this past spring, I want to say March, April timeframe, that I partook in a women's veteran business event that was a 3-day immersion, if you will, into business that literally opened my eyes to what is available, not only through the veterans division for supporting people and getting started with business, but also through the SBA. And as a result of that, I did link up with a mentor. So I would say start with your local SBA chapter. It's free. It is free. And I had a mentor that I was connected with, and she and I had standing appointments every Friday. She would look at my books. She would look at everything. She would tell me, okay, this is where you go to find this organization who assists people in learning usable skills like sewing. And so we can look at trying to get your manufacturing done, and we can employ some people who didn't necessarily have options before. And when you do that, there's actual money that the government provides, because you're supporting a sector of people who didn't necessarily have a skill set. And so they learned the skill set, and now you've employed them, and this is an opportunity. This is another avenue to get money. Working with her, I learned that when you have your business operation in a particular place based on the SBA map, if it's, I forget the word that they use to code it, but if your place of business fits within that map, there's money for that. There's subsidies for that. So you wouldn't know any of this. I wouldn't know any of this had it not been for the SBA. So I highly, highly recommend that if someone is even considering starting a business, to look into the SBA. The government is the largest purchaser of goods, and they have contracts available for everything, literally everything, right down to underwear for prisons, everything, right? So you can get yourself a government contract, whether you are teaching how to breastfeed to women in lower socioeconomic areas as a licensed registered nurse, or whether you're going into schools and teaching health, because we all know that the school I come from, my parents are educators. So I know all too well that the schools don't have money. They certainly didn't have money when I was growing up. The teachers were operating very lean, and they're still operating very lean, and it's terrible. So they're getting rid of a lot of programs at the school level. But as a clinician, as an advanced practice or a licensed registered nurse, there's no reason why you people watching can't take your knowledge and your know-how, go to Canva. Okay, I'm dropping gems at this point. Go to .com, get you an account. It's free. Put in the search on Canva, workbook. It'll pull up a template, and you start building your workbook to teach, whether it is 6 to 10-year-olds, the basics of eating well, or whether it is 11 to 14-year-olds, the basics of health, and whether it's 15 to 18-year-olds at the high school level, below the belt health. Create workbooks. Get you some business cards made. Go to, I use a company, it's called GR Print, but Vistaprint is another one. GR Print, you actually have to have a business. So but Vistaprint.com, go there, get you some business cards, and then make a list of schools. And you start going to these schools, and this is coming straight from my parents, both of whom were administrators in the education. You don't call, you need to show up. You ask to speak with the principal or the vice principal, and you have your 60-second spiel down. Hello, I'm a licensed registered nurse. I'm wanting to give back to the community. I am aware that there is Title I, or don't quote me on the title.
Google it.
I'll just say it's Title I. I understand that there is Title I money for enrichment programs. I'd like to provide an enrichment program for your school to support your kids in understanding their health. get you a little 15-page workbook, have a contract ready to go, and what that looks like. And now you are serving the community because now you are informing and educating the next generation on how to be healthy, how to understand their body, how to advocate within the health system, all these things that most people do not get. Clinicians, nurses, advanced practice providers. Most people don't understand that. And you get paid for it through a contract.
Guys,
thank you very
did you
much.
hear it? Did you hear that, guys? That's literally a business she just submitted right there on the spot. You go do it tomorrow. If you're like, I don't have anything to do, I want to do this or that, just again, work in the dark, figure out what needs to get done. You've got to build that Canva booklet, right? You've got to do that work. Do that work and then let it work for you. Again, it doesn't have to necessarily be this drudgery work of, I don't want to go to the hospital, or I've got this in addition to my work at the hospital. I'm doing both for a period of time. And then whenever your educational booklet that you've worked on is getting a little bit more traction, you've improved it. You've worked a couple more hours late into the night, a couple of nights out of the week to make the booklet, and you figured out what the people need. You're actually able to now make something that can work for you. And again, it may not necessarily bring in millions, but even if it brings in a little bit over time, that money starts to add up. And so it can allow you to do other things. I just think that is such a great tip. And again, you just mentored everybody that was listening. So no excuses, play like a champion. And then for the last question of the podcast, I'd like to ask if you could go back and give Kristy one piece of advice. She is just finishing up her military degree, time serving. She's just becoming a nurse. She's starting to go back. She just became a nurse. She's getting her MBA. What would you go back and tell her that you wish you would have known sooner based on what you today?
I would have told my then self, it's okay to shine.
Ooh.
It's okay to shine.
Yeah.
Being in the military, which is such a male-dominated field, this is medicine. I mean, I think nurses, it's a little carve out, right? But generally speaking, medicine is still a very male-dominated field.
Yeah.
And I was so fortunate in my military career to have strong mentors who were actually women. My chief was female. My commander was female. And there were times when I would say, I don't want to do this. And there would be a conversation with both of them in front of me. Well, we didn't ask you what you wanted. You will be doing this. Mm-hmm. And thank God. But I felt so much pressure from my peers at that time because I was doing so much more than they were. I was being slotted to do things that were not necessarily congruent with my rank. I was doing something that was a couple of ranks higher than what I was at the time. And so I felt some kind of way about it because I wanted friends and I lost friends. And for sure, I would look back and say, it's okay to shine. It was okay to shine in the military. It's okay to lose friends because if you're losing people based upon you being great, guess what, doll? They weren't your friends anyway. And it's the same thing, even in a nursing career. You're going to have people who are going to give you a hard time, who are going to wonder, well, why aren't you satisfied with just being on the floor? You're always talking about business and nobody wants to hear your ideas, this, that, and the other. It's okay to shine. Like if you want to stay in your corner, that's cool. But I'm going to go ahead and be a beacon of light and just kind of open my light up for everything that I'm due. And I think more of us as women need to recognize that it's okay for you to take up space.
Yes, I love that. I knew that's what you meant when you first said it. It's okay to shine because it's true. There's this idea that you just want to blend in. You just want to fit in. You don't want to be this awkward thing. You just want to kind of fit in. I'm here just like everybody else. But that is not how you move into positions of leadership or move into positions of entrepreneurship by trying to be like everybody else. Everybody else is broke, miserable, and burned out. Everybody else is broke, miserable, and burned out. Please shine. Please shine. Please stand out. Please be different because it sucks being normal. Normal sucks. And we need more people saying, hey, listen, I'm not going to be like the rest of y'all because this is not fun.
Yeah,
and that's okay. That's what we need. And I talk about that all the time on my podcast. There is no other Kristy. There's no other Sandra. Like there's not, like we're never replicated. Offline, what is it? Like offline duplicated, never replicated.
Never replicated.
Yeah. It's something like that. I don't know the saying. Don't quote me on the saying. But yeah, it's just kind of like one of those things like you're an individual. And like, you need to do what is individually for you. And if all of us were shining, it doesn't take away from my shine. When you shine, it doesn't take away from my shine. And so you've got to do you and let me do me. And we all can just do I guess that sounds kind of strange, but let's all just be ourselves. And that's really kind of what I was going to say. We all need to do ourselves, but I just,
I knew where you were going.
that's where I wanted that to go. So let me try to change it up because that might be weird. But yes, and I think it's beautifully said. And again, I hope that more and more people hear that. And I love what you've created. And I think it is fantastic that you are marrying all these different things and parts of your career together. So for the last part of the interview, I do a rapid fire question. Are you ready for your rapid fire questions?
Okay. I think so. I love Family Feud. So it's going to be like this.
So it's going to be fast. Okay. Steve Harvey, start the timer. What is your favorite food?
Mexican.
What time of day are you most inspired?
10 p.m.
10 p.m. And what was your first job ever?
Taco Bell
drive-through. You come up from there. I came up from Cracker Barrel. I love it. Well, again, give a shameless plug for your company. If you had to give a 30-second pitch so that people will buy your undies and what you offer, shoot it to my audience now. I want to hear it.
Shoot my shot. Absolutely. Yeah. Undies Loft. You can find us at UndiesLoft.com. Our underwear are breathable, made of bamboo. They absorb menstrual periods, postpartum, and mild bladder leaks. Definitely made for comfort, but you look fantastic wearing them. And you can find me, Undies Loft, and at FLOH Wear on Instagram if you have any questions. And I think that was less than 30 seconds, but that's the crux of it. And it has been a true pleasure being on here with you, Sandra. I could do this all day.
Me as well. We're kindred spirits for sure. So thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your experience and just being super vulnerable with all your struggles in life. And again, trauma and taking the trauma and creating something beautiful from it. That is, I think, the sign of a life truly well lived is by taking the things that happen to us that are hard and using those things to create things that are beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. And don't forget to enjoy the journey. Thanks for listening to this week's episode.